Before we dive into this incredible journey of how humanity defied every galactic expectation, I need you to do something for me. Hit that like button right now, seriously. Right now, because what you're about to witness will completely change how you think about size, power, and what it truly means to conquer a galaxy. And drop a comment telling me the exact moment you felt proud to be human. Trust me, there will be several. The crystal spires of the Galactic Registry Office gleamed like frozen starlight against the artificial aurora of Nexus Prime's atmospheric dome. Within the towering bureaucratic complex, Senior Registrar Zefkar of the Gorvathian Administrative Corps hunched over his workstation, his 4-meter frame making the supposedly universal furniture creak ominously under his weight at 847. Standard galactic years old, Zefkar had processed the first contact documentation for over 3,000 species. He prided himself on his ability to categorize new arrivals within the first few data packets. Size, he had learned, told you everything you needed to know about a species' potential. The holographic display flickered to life, projecting the latest application for galactic recognition. His compound eyes, each the size of a human fist, scanned the preliminary data with practiced efficiency. Species designation, Homo sapiens, he rumbled, his voice carrying the deep resonance that marked his people as natural leaders. Common. Name, humans. Origin, Sol-3, locally designated Earth. The biological metrics materialized before him, and Zefkar's mandibles clicked in what his species considered polite amusement. Average height, 1.7 meters, he read aloud to his assistant, a nervous Trilaxian scribe whose 6 arms scribbled notes with mechanical precision. Mass, 70 kilograms standard. Lifespan, 80 years. The scribe's antennae twitched. Sir, those readings seem unusually small. Should I double-check the conversion algorithms? Zefkar's laugh was like distant thunder. No need, Vexthi. I've seen this before. Another microspecies trying to play in the galactic arena. He gestured to the technological assessment scrolling past. Chemical propulsion rockets, electromagnetic communications, primitive fusion reactors. They've barely managed to crawl out of their gravity well. The cultural analysis section painted an even more amusing picture. Humans were apparently divided into hundreds of separate nation-states, couldn't agree on basic resource distribution, and spent considerable energy fighting among themselves over concepts as primitive as territorial boundaries. Classification recommendation? Vexthi inquired, 6 pens poised over his data tablets. Zefkar didn't hesitate. Minor species, Category 7, limited expansion potential. Assign them Restricted Development Zone 347B in the Outer Rim, 47. Uninhabited system should be more than sufficient for their ambitions. He paused the display on an image of the human representative who had submitted the application. Captain Elena Vasquez stood barely chest-high to a Gorvathian, her dark hair pulled back in what his xenological training identified as a practical military style. Her expression was calm, professional, and Zefkar noted with mild curiosity showed no signs of the intimidation that usually marked first contact with galactic civilization. She seems confident for such a small creature, Vexthi observed. They always are, initially, Zefkar replied, stamping the application with his massive seal. Reality tends to moderate their expectations quickly enough. File this under species unlikely to require council attention and move on to the next application. But as the hologram flickered off, Zefkar found himself pausing. There had been something in Captain Vasquez's eyes, a quality he couldn't quite identify. It wasn't the desperate hope of species begging for protection, nor the brittle arrogance of those trying to bluff their way to relevance. It was something else entirely. Certainty. He shook his massive head, dismissing the thought. Certainty was a luxury of size and power. The humans would learn. Meanwhile, 17 light-years away aboard the human colony ship Endurance, Captain Elena Vasquez received the galactic response to humanity's first contact application. She read the designation, Minor Species Category 7, and the resource allocation of 47 worthless systems in the galactic equivalent of the middle of nowhere. Her aide, Lieutenant Commander Marcus Webb, bristled with indignation. "Captain, this is insulting. They're treating us like children." Elena smiled, an expression that would have puzzled Zefkar had he seen it. "Marcus, they've just given us exactly what we need. Ma'am? 47 systems to ourselves. No oversight, no interference. No one watching over our shoulders while we figure out how this galaxy really works." She stood, her compact frame radiating the kind of confidence that had carried humanity from their home caves to the stars. "They think small means weak. Let's show them the difference." The Grand Assembly Hall of the Galactic Council was a monument to the philosophy that bigger was inherently better. The vaulted ceiling soared 200 meters overhead, held aloft by pillars that could have served as starship halls. The delegate platforms were arranged in ascending tiers, with the largest and most powerful species occupying the highest positions, literally looking down on their smaller neighbors. At the apex sat the Gorvathian delegation, their 4-meter frames occupying thrones carved from single asteroids. Below them, the 3-meter Veiltor representatives held court in chambers that gleamed with the accumulated wisdom of their 500-year lifespans. The silicon-based Nexari occupied computing platforms that hummed with the processing power of entire worlds, and far below, almost forgotten in the practical bustle of the lower levels, sat the representatives of the hundreds of minor species, those beings unfortunate enough to have evolved on worlds with lower gravity, smaller predators, or insufficient environmental pressure to produce proper giants. Ambassador Chen Wei of humanity sat in one of these lower galleries, her feet barely touching the floor of a chair designed for beings twice her size. At 38, she was young by galactic standards, practically an infant compared to the ancient beings discussing policy above her. But her eyes missed nothing as she studied the dynamics of power playing out in the Great Hall. The issue before the council, thundered High Arbiter Morgak of the Gorvathians, his voice echoing through speakers designed to carry across the vast space, is the territorial dispute between the Nexari technocracy and the Krellanathi mining consortium. The Nexari claim computational modeling priority, while the Krellanathi assert traditional extraction rights based on physical presence. Chun watched the debate unfold with fascination. The Nexari delegate, a crystalline being that stood 3 meters tall and communicated through harmonic frequencies that made her teeth ache, projected holographic models of resource extraction efficiency. The Krellanathi representative, a 4-meter rock-like creature with mandibles that could crack starship hulls, responded by literally pounding the platform hard enough to shake the entire hall. "Physical dominance," Chun murmured to her aide, taking notes on a tablet scaled for human hands. "Everything here comes down to who can loom over whom." The aide, Dr. Sarah Kim, a xenobiologist who had spent months studying galactic cultural patterns, nodded. "The docking bays, the furniture, the communication frequencies, it's all scaled for giants. We're literally marginalized by the architecture. Look at the Veiltor," Chun continued, gesturing subtly toward the ancient beings in the middle tier. 500 years of experience, accumulated wisdom that spans centuries, and they still defer to the Gorvathians because they're a meter shorter. The current dispute was resolved, as most were, by the simple expedient of the largest species making a declaration that the smaller ones accepted without argument. Physical size translated directly to political power, which translated directly to resource allocation. It was elegant in its simplicity and crushing in its implications for anyone who hadn't evolved on a high-gravity death world. The next item, Morgak announced, concerns the allocation of trade route protection services. The minor species of the Outer Rim have requested increased patrol coverage following reports of piracy in their sectors. Shun straightened. This affected humanity directly. Their 47 assigned systems lay squarely in the region under discussion. A Gorvathian trade delegate rose, his massive frame catching the light from the hall's artificial suns. High Arbiter, the minor species contribute negligible economic value to galactic commerce. Perhaps their resources would be better allocated to establish protective relationships with major powers. Chun felt her jaw clench. She recognized the veiled language. They were discussing humanity and the other small species like children who needed adult supervision. The Gorvathian Trade Federation, the delegate continued, is prepared to offer comprehensive protection services to these developing civilizations. In exchange for modest resource extraction agreements, we can guarantee safe passage and peaceful development. Dr. Kim leaned over. Ambassador, he's talking about turning us into a client state. I know, Chen replied quietly. And if we accept, we'll never be anything more. She stood, knowing that her movement would barely register in the vast hall. But she had studied the Council's procedural rules obsessively, and she knew that even minor species retained certain rights. High Arbiter, she called out, her voice amplified by the chamber's acoustics. The Earth delegation requests permission to address the Council. A ripple of what might have been amusement passed through the upper tiers. Morgak's compound eyes swiveled downward, taking several seconds to locate the source of the interruption. Human representative, he said, consulting his notes. Very well. The Council recognizes the Earth delegation. Please state your position briefly. Chun had planned for this moment. She stepped to the center of her platform, knowing that every eye in the hall was now focused on her diminutive form. Honored delegates, she began, her voice carrying clearly. Through the chamber's advanced acoustics, the Earth delegation appreciates the generous offer of protection from the Gorvathian Trade Federation. However, we must respectfully decline. The silence that followed was profound. Minor species simply didn't decline offers from major powers. It wasn't done. The human colonies will provide for their own defense and development, Chun continued. We believe that independence, even with its challenges, serves our people better than dependence, however benevolent. Morgak's mandibles clicked with what Chun had learned to recognize as confusion. Representative Chun, perhaps you do not fully understand the realities of galactic civilization. The Outer Rim is a dangerous region. Small species require ... With respect, High Arbiter, we prefer to learn by doing rather than by being protected from learning. Another ripple passed through the assembly, this one tinged with disbelief. The Gorvathian delegate who had made the original offer actually took a step forward. You would risk the safety of your colonies for the sake of... What? Pride? Chun smiled, and in that expression was something that would have made Zethkar pause again. Not pride, delegate. Principle. We believe that strength comes from facing challenges, not from being sheltered from them. The debate that followed was brief and predictable. The major powers expressed concern for humanity's naive idealism. The middle powers suggested compromise positions. The minor species remained diplomatically silent, unwilling to risk their own protective arrangements. In the end, the Council voted to honor humanity's request for independence, largely because it cost them nothing and amused them greatly. The small humans would learn their limitations soon enough, and when they did, they would come crawling back, grateful for whatever protection was offered. As the session concluded and the massive delegates filed out through doors designed for giants, Chen remained on her platform, studying the architecture of power that surrounded her. "Ambassador," Dr. Kim asked quietly, "are you sure about this? We're truly on our own now." Chen nodded, her eyes tracking the movements of the great powers as they discussed matters far above the concerns of minor species. "Sarah, every advantage they have comes from their size. But advantage isn't just about being big. Sometimes it's about being exactly the right size for the task at hand." She gathered her human-scaled notes and headed for the exit, leaving through a smaller door marked minor species access. As she walked through corridors sized for beings half her height, Chun couldn't help but smile. The galaxy's giants had just made their first mistake. They had assumed that small meant insignificant. Time would prove them wrong. Hey there, space explorers. If you're feeling that tingle of human pride starting to build up, smash that like button right now and let me know in the comments. What would you have said to that Gorvathian delegate? Because trust me, we're just getting started with showing these aliens what humans are really capable of. Dr. Sarah Kim floated awkwardly in what the Nexari called a standard ergonomic interface chamber, her feet dangling a full meter above the floor while her hands couldn't quite reach the control surfaces without stretching. The silicon-based Nexari engineer who was attempting to brief her on docking procedures towered above her like a crystalline mountain, his harmonic voice creating frequency patterns that made her inner ear ache. Standard approach vector requires alignment with gravitational differential compensators. The Nexari hummed, gesturing with appendages that span 2 meters in each direction. Your vessel's mass signature suggests Category 7 designation. Berthing allocation 47 Gamma Minor should accommodate your dimensional requirements. Sarah bit back a sigh. After 6 months in galactic civilization, humanity had learned that dimensional requirements was the polite way of saying, we don't really have anything that fits you, so we'll put you wherever there's space. The docking clamps, she managed to ask, stretching to reach a control interface clearly designed for beings with twice her arm length. Are they adjustable for smaller vessels? Adjustable? The Nexari's crystalline form chimed with confusion. All galactic standard equipment operates at optimal efficiency for standard vessel configurations. Surely your species constructs to universal specifications? That was the heart of the problem. Universal specifications had been established by species that averaged 3 to 4 meters in height, lived for centuries, and thought in terms of massive, long-term projects. Human technology, born from a species that stood less than 2 meters tall and lived less than a century, operated on entirely different principles. We'll make it work, Sarah said, as she had said hundreds of times in the past months. Thank you for your patience. The Nexari engineers' harmonic patterns shifted to what their xenological database suggested was polite dismissal. As Sarah left the interface chamber crawling through an access port that was just barely large enough for her to squeeze through, she reflected on the systematic challenges humanity faced in a galaxy designed for giants. It wasn't just the docking bays, though those were problematic enough. Human ships, designed for efficiency and built by beings with limited lifespans, were compact and streamlined. Galactic docking facilities expected vessels the size of city blocks, with standardized docking ports that were literally larger than entire human spacecraft. The furniture was worse. Sarah had attended 17 diplomatic functions in the past month, and had spent most of them either standing on makeshift platforms or sitting in chairs where her feet couldn't touch the floor. And the armrests were at shoulder height. The Gorvathians had eventually begun providing minor species accommodation platforms, essentially booster seats, but the psychological impact of needing Special furniture to participate in conversations was deliberate and unmistakable. Communication protocols presented their own challenges. Galactic Standard operated on frequency ranges and harmonic patterns suited to beings with vocal apparatus the size of pipe organs. Humans could produce the sounds barely, but it required technological assistance and left most human diplomats hoarse after extended conversations, but perhaps most frustrating were the simple everyday interactions. Trade negotiations conducted around tables that came up to her chest. Transportation systems with steps sized for meter-long strides. Even basic things like door handles, light switches, and environmental controls all positioned for beings that towered over humans like adults over toddlers. Sarah's communicator chimed with an incoming message from Ambassador Chun. Conference room 7, 15 minutes. Bring the adaptation reports. She made her way through the station's corridors, noting how the other minor species had learned to navigate the oversized environment. The Rillan delegation traveled in groups, working together to operate interfaces designed for larger hands. The Zilari had developed specialized tools extending grips and platform lifts that allowed them to function in facilities scaled for giants. Humanity, characteristically, had chosen a different approach. Conference Room 7 was actually a minor species meeting facility, one of the few spaces on the station scaled for smaller beings. As Sarah entered, she found Ambassador Chun, Captain Vasquez, and Chief Engineer Patricia Santos huddled around a holographic display showing technical schematics. "Report," Chun said without preamble. "The Nexari are offering us berth 47 Gamma Minor," Sarah began. "It's essentially a storage bay they've converted for our use. The docking clamps don't fit our ships, the power couplings are incompatible, and the atmospheric processors assume methane breathers." "In other words," Captain Vasquez said dryly, "it's the galactic equivalent of being seated at the kids' table." "It gets worse," Chief Santos added, pulling up a new display. "I've been analyzing the trade protocols. Galactic commerce assumes bulk transactions, massive cargo transfers, between species that measure their populations in the trillions and think in terms of century-long economic cycles. Our entire Earth economy wouldn't register as a rounding error in their smallest trade agreements." Chun studied the data, her expression thoughtful. "Show me the infrastructure analysis." Santos highlighted different sections of the schematics. "Everything's built for giants, Ambassador. The mining operations extract resources by the millions of tons. The manufacturing facilities produce components the size of buildings. The transportation networks move cargo loads that would dwarf our largest spacecraft. And the inefficiencies?" Chun asked. This was the part that had caught Sarah's attention during her analysis. "Massive," she reported. "Energy waste factors in the 40 to 60% range. Material waste often exceeding 30%. Quality control standards that would be considered catastrophic by human engineering principles." "They're giants," Captain Vasquez observed. "They can afford to be wasteful." "Can they?" Chun's smile was becoming familiar to the team. It appeared whenever she had spotted an opportunity that others had missed. "Patricia, show me the small-scale opportunities analysis." Santos pulled up a new display, this one highlighting areas where human-scale technology could interface with galactic systems. "Precision manufacturing," she began. "The Nexari computational systems require components accurate to within 0.1% tolerances. Their current manufacturing methods achieve 0.1% accuracy at best." "Medical technology," Dr. Kim added, catching on to Chun's line of thinking. "Most galactic species have biological systems scaled proportionally to their size. But disease, injury, and malfunction often occur at cellular or molecular levels. Human medical technology operates at exactly the right scale for precision intervention. And resources, Captain Vasquez continued. They consider millions of small asteroids uneconomical to extract because their mining equipment can't operate efficiently on such small targets. But those asteroids contain more refined metals and rare elements than entire planets. Chun nodded. We've been thinking about this backwards. The galaxy isn't designed wrong for us. We're designed right for niches that giants can't fill. She stood, moving to the room's small viewport. Outside, the massive forms of galactic civilization moved with ponderous majesty ships the size of mountains, stations that dwarfed moons, beings that made humans look like insects by comparison. They think small means weak, Chun said quietly. But small also means fast, precise, efficient, able to go where they can and do what they can. What are you suggesting? Sarah asked. I'm suggesting we stop trying to be giants, Chun replied, and start being the best small species the galaxy has ever seen. Over the following weeks, humanity began to implement what would later be called the right-size protocol. Instead of struggling to adapt to galactic-scale infrastructure, they began building their own. Human docking stations were constructed in the gaps between larger facilities small, efficient ports that could service multiple ships in the time it took galactic stations to process a single massive vessel. Human-scale manufacturing centers appeared in asteroid fields that larger species considered worthless, producing precision components with accuracy that made galactic engineers weep with envy. Most importantly, humans began offering services that played to their unique advantages. Repair work in confined spaces that larger beings couldn't access. Precision manufacturing of components that galactic technology couldn't produce reliably. Emergency medical intervention, using techniques scaled for cellular-level precision. The first major breakthrough came when a Veilter merchant vessel suffered a critical failure in its navigation computer. The fault was in a processing node barely larger than a human fingernail, located deep within the ship's central core in a maintenance space too small for Veilter technicians to access. Human engineers not only reached the fault, they repaired it with a precision that improved the navigation system's efficiency by 23%. Word spread quickly through the merchant networks. The small humans could fix things that no one else could reach. The second breakthrough was economic. Dr. Kim's analysis had identified thousands of minor resource extraction opportunities scattered throughout galactic space asteroids, small moons, and planetary rings that contained significant quantities of rare materials but were too small for traditional galactic mining operations to process profitably. Human extraction teams, using equipment scaled for precision rather than volume, began harvesting these resources at profit margins that made galactic economists recalculate their assumptions about economic viability. But it was the third breakthrough that truly caught the galaxy's attention. Ambassador Chun stood in the same assembly hall where she had declared humanity's independence 6 months earlier. This time, however, the minor species gallery was packed with representatives eager to hear her address. More surprisingly, delegates from the middle tiers had requested copies of her presentation. "Honored delegates," she began, her voice now carrying the confidence of proven success rather than naive hope. 6 months ago, this council classified humanity as a minor species with limited expansion potential. Today, I'm here to present our preliminary economic impact report. The holographic display showed the galactic region that had been assigned to humanity. 6 months ago, it had been 47 worthless systems on the edge of known space. Today, it hummed with activity. Human colonies now operate in 38 of our assigned systems, Chen reported. We have established 247 resource extraction operations, 156 manufacturing facilities, and 89 service stations. Our total economic output has reached 0.3% of galactic GDP, small by your standards, but representing a 400,000% increase over our initial baseline. A murmur of surprise passed through the assembly. Even 0.3% of galactic GDP was a significant number. More importantly, Chun continued, human services have directly improved the efficiency of galactic operations by an average of 15% in the sectors where we operate. Precision manufacturing, specialized repair services, and resource extraction from previously uneconomical sources have generated value far beyond our direct economic contribution. High Arbiter Morgak leaned forward. Representative Chen, these numbers are impressive. However, surely this represents the limits of your species' expansion potential? Chun's smile had evolved over the past months. Where once it had carried hope and determination, now it held the quiet confidence of demonstrated capability. High Arbiter, we believe we're just getting started. 18 months after humanity's first galactic address, Chief Engineer Patricia Santos stood in the control center of Outpost Haven, humanity's first major deep space installation. Through the transparent aluminum windows, she could see the seemingly empty void that had been designated as worthless space by galactic authorities. What the authorities couldn't see, because they were looking for massive signatures that registered on galactic-scale sensors, was the vast network of small-scale activity that humanity had woven throughout the region. Status report, Lisa, Santos called to her operations coordinator. Lieutenant Lisa Park, who had been tracking the morning's operations from her human-scaled command station, pulled up the holographic display. 53 extraction teams deployed across the Kepler cluster. The precision mining operation on asteroid KX-447 has yielded another 23 tons of refined titanium-vanadium alloy. The Nexari are offering 400% above standard rates because our purity levels exceed their manufacturing tolerances by orders of magnitude. Santos smiled. The Nexari, despite their computational sophistication, had never mastered the art of precision extraction. Their mining operations were marvels of efficiency at massive scales, but they operated like using sledgehammers to perform surgery. Humanity's approach treating each asteroid like a precision engineering problem rather than a bulk resource. Extraction opportunity had revolutionized rare material harvesting. What about the communication relay network? Santos asked. Online and expanding, Park replied, highlighting a web of connections that spread across dozens of star systems. Quantum entanglement communication nodes now cover 37 systems. Response time for galactic communication has dropped from days to seconds in regions where our network is active. This had been humanity's master stroke. While galactic civilization had developed faster than light travel, their communication systems still relied on physical message carriers, fast ships that could carry information between star systems in days or weeks rather than years. The concept of instantaneous communication across galactic distances had simply never occurred to beings who measured their lifespans in centuries and their projects in millennia. Humans, with their brief lifespans and impatient natures, had approached the problem differently. If you couldn't wait weeks for a message to cross space, you found a way to make the wait unnecessary. Incoming priority transmission, Park announced. Ambassador Chun from the Nexus Prime negotiations. Chun's image appeared in the hologram, and Santos could see the barely contained excitement in her expression. Patricia, I need your engineering assessment on a proposal that just came through. The Gorvathian Trade Federation is requesting human assistance with their shipping efficiency problem. Santos raised an eyebrow. The Gorvathians asking humans for help was like watching giants ask children to reach something on a high shelf. What kind of efficiency problem? Their cargo vessels are experiencing 47% fuel efficiency loss on standard trade routes. They're blaming it on unforeseen gravitational anomalies, but I suspect the real problem is that they're using ships the size of small moons to transport cargo that could fit in our medium-range vessels. Santos pulled up the Gorvathian shipping specifications on her display. The numbers were staggering. Gorvathian cargo vessels were over 5 kilometers long, carried crews of tens of thousands, and consumed fusion fuel at rates that could power entire human colonies. "They're flying cities," Santos murmured, studying the specifications. "Patricia, what's the cargo capacity utilization?" Park ran the calculations. Average cargo utilization, 23%. They're flying ships designed to carry millions of tons of cargo with loads that rarely exceed a few 100,000 tons. And fuel efficiency? Catastrophic. They're burning enough fuel to accelerate their massive ships to travel speeds that could be achieved by smaller vessels using a fraction of the energy. Santos began to see the scope of the problem. Lisa, run a comparative analysis. Human cargo efficiency versus Gorvathian standards. The results appeared on the display, and Santos whistled softly. Human cargo vessels, designed for efficiency rather than impressiveness, could carry equivalent loads at 300% better fuel efficiency, with crew requirements 95% smaller and maintenance costs that were barely measurable by galactic standards. Ambassador, Santos said slowly, if we help them optimize their shipping operations, we wouldn't just be improving their efficiency, we'd be revolutionizing galactic commerce. That's what I was thinking. The question is, are we ready for that level of integration with galactic economy? Santos considered the question. Over the past 18 months, humanity had established itself as a reliable provider of specialized services. They had built a reputation for precision, efficiency, and reliability that had earned them respect even from species that still considered them minor. But directly improving the efficiency of galactic trade would put them at the center of the galaxy's economic nervous system. What are the Gorvathians offering? Santos asked. Exclusive human operational authority over shipping optimization in 17 major trade sectors. Full licensing fees for our technology. And ... Chun paused, clearly savoring the moment. Recognition as a major contributing species with permanent council representation. Santos felt her breath catch. Major. Contributing species status would move humanity from the children's table to the adult conversation. It would mean that human concerns would be heard. Human proposals would be considered, and human innovations would be implemented at galactic scale. Recommend acceptance, Santos said immediately. But with conditions. What kind of conditions? Santos was already pulling up technical specifications and strategic projections. We maintain control over our technology. We train their crews, but we keep the core innovations proprietary. And we require infrastructure modifications to accommodate human-scale operations, meaning that galactic civilization starts building things that work for small species, not just giants. The implications were staggering. If humanity could demonstrate that efficiency improvements were possible through smaller scale, more precise operations, it would force a fundamental reevaluation of galactic technological philosophy. The giants had assumed that bigger was always better, but humanity was proving that optimal size was situational. Over the following weeks, human engineering teams spread throughout Gorvathian space, analyzing shipping operations with the kind of systematic precision that only a species with limited lifespans could appreciate. The results were revelatory. Gorvathian shipping had evolved like everything else in galactic civilization through the simple expedient of making everything larger and more powerful. Their ships were magnificent testaments to engineering prowess. But they were also monuments to inefficiency. Human analysis revealed that 67% of galactic shipping routes could be optimized by using smaller, faster vessels for time-sensitive cargo, while reserving the massive ships for bulk materials that truly required their enormous capacity. Fuel consumption could be reduced by 40% simply by matching ship size to cargo requirements, rather than defaulting to bigger is better. More importantly, human quantum communication networks could coordinate shipping in real time, allowing for dynamic route optimization that could reduce average shipping time by 60% while simultaneously reducing fuel costs. The first test route was between Gorvathian Prime and the Nexari computational centers in the Sigma Draconis system. Under the old system, massive Gorvathian cargo vessels made the journey in 17 days, carrying mixed cargo loads at 23% capacity utilization. Under the human-optimized system, cargo was sorted by priority and destination. Time-sensitive materials traveled on fast human courier vessels that made the journey in 4 days. Bulk materials continued to use Gorvathian vessels, but with 89% capacity utilization and optimized routes that reduced travel time to 11 days. The results were impossible to ignore. The same amount of cargo was being moved 40% faster while using 35% less fuel and requiring 50% fewer crew hours. Within 6 months, every major power in the galaxy was requesting human shipping optimization consultations. Dr. Sarah Kim, now serving as Director of Galactic Integration Studies, found herself in the surreal position of briefing species that had existed for millions of years on efficiency principles that seemed obvious to humans. The key insight, she explained to a gathering of Veiltar logistics coordinators, is that efficiency isn't about raw power, it's about matching capabilities to requirements. The Veiltar, with their 500-year lifespans and tendency toward vast contemplative projects, had initially struggled with human concepts of rapid optimization. But the economic advantages were undeniable. Your species operates with the efficiency coefficient of 0.34. Dr. Kim continued, displaying comparative analysis on her human-scaled presentation system. By implementing human-designed optimization protocols, preliminary modeling suggests you could achieve 0.78 efficiency while actually reducing resource expenditure. Elder Coordinator Thelvia, whose current incarnation was 347 years old, gestured with appendages that moved like slow-motion poetry. Dr. Kim, your species' approach to logistics appears to assume that rapid response is always optimal. Our civilization has achieved stability through deliberate, measured progress. Elder Coordinator, we're not suggesting you abandon your approach to long-term planning. We're suggesting that you can achieve your long-term goals more efficiently by optimizing the individual steps along the way. The mathematical demonstration that followed was compelling enough to convince even the cautious Veiltar. When Dr. Kim showed that optimization could reduce the time required to complete their centuries-long projects by 30% while improving quality and reducing resource consumption, resistance crumbled. But it was the Nexari who provided the most dramatic validation of human efficiency principles. The silicon-based Nexari had built their civilization on computational precision, but they had never applied that precision to their physical operations. Their manufacturing facilities were marvels of computational complexity built with the inefficient assumption that physical resources were unlimited. Human engineers, working with Nexari computational systems, redesigned their primary manufacturing complex on the principle that computational precision should extend to physical precision. The results exceeded everyone's expectations. Manufacturing efficiency increased by 127%. Waste materials dropped to near zero levels. Energy consumption decreased by 45%. Quality improved so dramatically that Nexari products began setting new galactic standards for reliability. Your species has achieved something remarkable, admitted Primary Coordinator Zixanth of the Nexari Technical Council. You have made computational efficiency physically manifest. But perhaps the most significant development was the cultural shift that began to ripple through galactic civilization. Young aliens began to question the assumption that bigger was automatically better. Efficiency became a desirable trait rather than an embarrassing compromise. Species that had been dismissed as minor because of their size began to be valued for their unique capabilities. The Rillan, with their natural tendency toward precision, craftsmanship, found themselves in demand for quality manufacturing. The Zelari, with their rapid adaptation abilities, became sought-after troubleshooters for complex system optimization. Even species that had never before been considered for Galactic Council membership began to contribute unique perspectives and capabilities. Ambassador Chun, now bearing the title Director of Galactic Efficiency Coordination, addressed the Council from a platform that had been specially constructed to accommodate multiple species sizes, itself a symbol of the changes humanity had brought to galactic civilization. Honored delegates, she began, her voice now carrying the authority of demonstrated success. 18 months ago, humanity was classified as a minor species with limited potential. Today, human-designed systems coordinate 34% of galactic commerce, and human efficiency protocols have improved average galactic productivity by 23%. The statistics were impressive, but Chun knew that the real victory was in the cultural transformation taking place throughout galactic civilization. More importantly, she continued, we have demonstrated that diversity of size, approach, and perspective strengthens our civilization rather than weakening it. The galaxy is vast enough to benefit from both giants and precision specialists, from ancient wisdom and rapid innovation, from massive power and efficient optimization. Hi, Arbiter Morgak, whose species had been the original architects of size-based hierarchy, gestured for permission to speak. Director Chun. Director Chun, High Arbiter Morgak continued, his massive frame somehow seeming less imposing than it had 18 months earlier. The Gorvathian Assembly acknowledges that our initial assessment of humanity's potential was ... incomplete. However, we must address concerns about the rapid pace of change your species has introduced to galactic systems. Chun had expected this. The giants were learning to appreciate efficiency, but change made them nervous. High Arbiter, what specific concerns does the Assembly wish to address? Morgak gestured to the holographic display, which showed the expanding network of human-optimized systems throughout galactic space. The rate of technological integration has exceeded all precedents. Traditional galactic infrastructure projects require decades of planning, centuries of implementation. Your species implements system-wide changes in months. Is the concern about the speed of implementation or the effectiveness of the results? Chun asked. Both, admitted Councillor Valthara of the Vailter delegation. Our species has maintained stability through careful, measured progress. Rapid change introduces variables that our long-term planning cannot accommodate. Dr. Kim, now part of Chun's senior advisory team, stepped forward. Councillor Valthara, may I present the stability analysis of human-optimized systems? The holographic display shifted to show performance metrics across all sectors where human technology had been implemented. The data was compelling. System reliability had improved by an average of 34%. Maintenance requirements had decreased by 29%, and failure rates had dropped to near-zero levels. Your rapid changes, Dr. Kim explained, actually increase long-term stability by eliminating inefficiencies that would have caused progressive system degradation. Primary Coordinator Zixanth of the Nexari interjected, his harmonic voice carrying computational certainty. Dr. Kim speaks accurately. Nexari analysis confirms that human optimization protocols extend system operational lifespan by 67% while reducing maintenance complexity by 41%. But it was the next speaker who truly surprised the assembly. Elder Coordinator Thelvia of the Veiltar, whose species was known for resistance to change, rose from her platform. "Honored delegates," she began, her voice carrying the weight of 3.5 centuries of experience. "I have observed galactic civilization for longer than most species' entire evolutionary development. I have seen technologies rise and fall, civilizations expand and contract, and countless attempts to improve upon established methods." The assembly fell silent. When a Veiltar elder spoke about long-term perspective, even Gorvathians listened. "The human approach represents something unprecedented," Thelvia continued. "They have achieved rapid improvement without sacrificing reliability. They have introduced change without destroying stability. Most remarkably, they have enhanced our capabilities without requiring us to abandon our core strengths." She gestured toward the efficiency displays. "The Veiltar delegation hereby formally endorses continued human integration into galactic systems, with a recommendation for expansion of human advisory roles in infrastructure development." The vote that followed was not the grudging acceptance that had characterized humanity's initial recognition. It was an overwhelming endorsement, 847 species in favor, 23 abstentions, and only 4 opposed, but the real transformation was already taking place outside the council chambers. Captain Elena Vasquez, now promoted to admiral and serving as director of human strategic operations, stood in the command center of Nexus Station Alpha, humanity's first major deep space installation that had been designed from the ground up rather than adapted from existing galactic infrastructure. The station was a marvel of human engineering philosophy made manifest. Instead of a single massive structure, it consisted of dozens of interconnected modules, each optimized for specific functions. Manufacturing pods, research laboratories, communication arrays, and living quarters were connected by a flexible network that could be reconfigured as needs changed. More importantly, the station had been designed to accommodate multiple species comfortably. Gorvathian delegates could meet in chambers scaled for their massive frames, while Rillan artisans worked in precision manufacturing bays sized for their delicate touch. Human coordination centers tied everything together through quantum communication networks that operated at the speed of thought. "Admiral," called Commander Park from the communication center, "we're receiving priority signals from 17 different sectors. The morning coordination protocol is ready for your review." Vasquez smiled. The morning coordination protocol had become the galaxy's unofficial daily briefing. Every major power, most minor species, and hundreds of commercial operations now synchronized their daily activities through human communication networks. "Display the overview, Lisa." The holographic projection filled the command center with a 3-dimensional map of local galactic space. Thousands of indicators showed the real-time status of shipping routes, manufacturing operations, resource extraction sites, and communication relays. It was a living representation of galactic civilization's nervous system, and humanity had become its primary coordinator. "Shipping efficiency is at 94% of optimal," Commander Park reported. "The Nexari computational centers report 15% above standard processing capacity due to optimized resource allocation. Gorvathian trade routes show a 23% improvement in cargo delivery schedules. Any problems requiring attention?" 3 items, Admiral. The Krolanathi mining operation in Sector 7 is reporting equipment failures that are affecting rare metal extraction. The Veilter Cultural Exchange Program has requested communication optimization for their philosophical symposium, and ... Park paused, highlighting a region near the galactic rim. We're receiving distress signals from an unknown source beyond the explored regions. Vasquez studied the displays. 6 months ago, any one of these situations would have required weeks of bureaucratic coordination through galactic channels. Now human networks could address all three simultaneously. Route the Krellanathi problem to Engineering Team 7. They specialize in heavy equipment optimization. Contact the Veilter coordinators and offer them dedicated bandwidth for their symposium. And prepare a rapid response team for the distress signals. Admiral, Commander Park said carefully, the distress signals are coming from outside Council space. We don't have authorization for response operations beyond galactic borders. Lisa, who currently has the authority to authorize rapid response. Operations? Well, we do, Admiral. The Emergency Coordination Protocol grants human operations priority authority for immediate response to distress signals anywhere in the communication network coverage area. Vasquez's smile widened. The Emergency Coordination Protocol had been established because human response times were so much faster than traditional galactic bureaucracy. What had started as a practical solution to communication delays had evolved into something approaching operational authority over galactic emergency response. Then authorize the response. Deploy Scout Group 3 to investigate and provide assistance as needed. Within minutes, human rapid response vessels were accelerating toward the distress signals at speeds that made galactic observers nervous. Human ships, designed for efficiency rather than impressive size, could achieve accelerations and response times that larger vessels simply couldn't match. But it was the cultural implications that truly marked how much had changed. Dr. Sarah Kim, now serving as Director of Interspecies Integration, was conducting her daily analysis of galactic social patterns when she noticed something remarkable in the communication data. Admiral, she called across the command center, you need to see this cultural analysis. The holographic display shifted to show communication patterns across galactic civilization. Instead of the traditional hub-and-spoke pattern with major powers at the center and minor species on the periphery, the network now resembled a complex web with multiple interconnected nodes. Young aliens are adopting human communication protocols, Dr. Kim explained. Fast, direct, efficient information exchange instead of the traditional elaborate courtesy rituals. They're impatient with the old hierarchical systems. What kind of implications are we looking at? Revolutionary ones. Traditional galactic society operated on the assumption that wisdom came with age and size. Young aliens deferred to their elders and accepted that change happened slowly. But human influence is teaching them that innovation and efficiency can come from any source. The evidence was everywhere. Young Gorvathians were designing smaller, more efficient equipment instead of defaulting to massive constructions. Nexari. Computational specialists were developing rapid response protocols that could adapt to changing conditions instead of requiring extensive pre-programming. Even young Veilter were questioning whether centuries-long planning periods were always optimal. Admiral, Commander Park interrupted, Scout Group 3 is reporting from the distress signal location. You're going to want to see this directly. The communication link established, and Captain Maria Santos, daughter of Chief Engineer Patricia Santos and representative of the new generation of humans who had grown up in galactic civilization, appeared in the hologram. Admiral Vasquez, we've reached the source of the distress signals. It's not what we expected. The display shifted to show external feeds from the scout ships. What they revealed defied easy categorization. It appears to be a massive spaceborne organism, Captain Santos reported. Possibly biological, possibly artificial, definitely intelligent. It's approximately 40 kilometers in length and appears to be injured. Admiral Vasquez studied the images. The entity was unlike anything in galactic databases, a flowing, organic form that seemed to shift between states of matter, surrounded by what looked like technological constructs that grew rather than being built. Has it communicated directly? That's the strange part, Admiral. It's broadcasting on frequencies that match our quantum communication protocols, almost like it learned our technology by observing our networks. The implication sent a chill through the command center. If there were intelligences beyond galactic civilization that could learn human technology by observation, the galaxy's expansion into unknown regions might encounter entities far more sophisticated than anyone had imagined. Captain Santos, establish a cautious communication protocol. Standard first contact procedures, but maintain safe distance and be prepared for immediate withdrawal if the entity shows hostile intent. What followed was humanity's first independent first contact with a Patak, truly alien intelligence. The entity, which introduced itself through mathematical concepts that roughly translated as Song of Growing Patterns, had indeed learned human communication protocols by observing quantum transmissions. More remarkably, it expressed fascination with human optimization principles. Small, fast, efficient creates patterns Song of Growing Patterns had not conceived. The entity communicated through harmonic mathematics that human translation systems could barely process. Large, slow, powerful was Song of Growing Patterns' only understanding. Small, fast, efficient creates new possibilities for growth patterns. The entity had been damaged in an encounter with what it described as rigid, unchanging devourers, apparently. Some form of hostile intelligence from beyond even its own region of space. Traditional galactic technology would have been insufficient to assist such a massive being, but human precision engineering offered possibilities that had never been considered. Over the following days, human engineering teams worked with the entity to develop repair protocols that combined human precision technology with the entity's biological regeneration capabilities. The success of this collaboration sent shock waves through galactic civilization. Not only had humans achieved independent first contact, they had successfully rendered assistance to an intelligence that dwarfed anything in galactic space. The implications for humanity's status in galactic civilization were profound. Ambassador Chun, now bearing the title Director of Galactic Coordination, addressed an emergency session of the full Galactic Assembly. Honored delegates, she began, 12 hours ago, human rapid response teams encountered and successfully rendered assistance to an unknown intelligence from beyond our explored regions. This entity has provided information about potential threats from outside our galactic civilization. The briefing that followed changed everything. The entity's Song of Growing Patterns had described encounters with intelligences that approached galactic-scale engineering problems through pure force and consumption rather than optimization and efficiency. These rigid, unchanging devourers apparently consumed entire star systems to fuel massive, wasteful constructions that serve no purpose other than displays of power. The entity suggests, Chen continued, that our galaxy's approach to civilization may be uniquely vulnerable to such threats because our traditional bigger is better philosophy mirrors their own approach. However, human optimization principles represent something they have not encountered and may not understand. High Arbiter Morgak leaned forward. Director Chun, are you suggesting that humanity's unconventional ... approach to engineering might provide advantages against unknown threats? I'm suggesting that diversity of approach strengthens our civilization's ability to respond to unforeseen challenges. The entity specifically noted that human precision technology achieved results that its own massive-scale capabilities could not match. The debate that followed marked a fundamental shift in galactic thinking. For the first time in galactic history, major powers were arguing not about who was largest or most powerful, but about who could contribute the most diverse and effective approaches to civilization's challenges. The resolution that emerged was unprecedented. The establishment of the Galactic Diversity Initiative, with humanity serving as primary coordinators for integrating different species' unique capabilities into galactic defense and development strategies. But perhaps the most significant change was in how galactic civilization saw itself. The discovery that vast intelligences existed beyond their own borders, and that these intelligences might pose threats that traditional galactic approaches couldn't address, forced a reevaluation of basic assumptions about survival and success. Size and power remained important, but they were no longer considered sufficient. Efficiency, adaptability, and innovative thinking became recognized as essential capabilities for long-term survival. And humanity, the minor species that had been dismissed 18 months earlier, found itself at the center of galactic civilization's transformation into something more diverse, more resilient, and more capable than it had ever been before. Admiral Vasquez, reviewing the daily coordination reports from her command center, reflected on how completely the galaxy had changed. Human networks now coordinated the daily operations of trillions of beings across thousands of star systems. Human technology had become essential infrastructure for galactic civilization. Human approaches to problem solving were being adopted by species that had existed for millions of years. But most importantly, the galaxy had learned that strength came not from uniformity and dominance, but from diversity and cooperation. Small species had indeed taken the galaxy by storm, not through conquest, but through becoming indispensable. 3 years after humanity's first contact with galactic civilization, the storm warnings began as whispers in the quantum communication networks that now connected thousands of worlds. Song of Growing Patterns. The vast intelligence that humanity had befriended beyond the galactic rim transmitted urgent harmonics that human translation systems struggled to process. Rigid, unchanging devourer's approach. Pattern song detects vast consuming fleet. Human small, fast, efficient may be galaxy's survival pattern. Admiral Elena Vasquez stood in the primary command center of Unity Station, humanity's new galactic coordination facility. The station itself had become a symbol of how much the galaxy had changed. Complex network of interconnected modules that could accommodate every known species while maintaining the efficient human-scale operations that had revolutionized galactic civilization. "Show me the sensor analysis," she commanded. The holographic display materialized, showing the long-range detection data that Song of Growing Patterns had shared through channels that transcended normal space-time limitations. What it revealed made even the experienced officers in the command center draw sharp breaths. Commander Lisa Park, now serving as Director of Galactic Intelligence Coordination, highlighted key elements of the display. "Admiral, preliminary analysis suggests a fleet of approximately 10,000 vessels approaching from beyond the galactic rim. Individual ship signatures indicate lengths ranging from 50 to 200 kilometers. Estimated total mass, equivalent to 400 solar systems." Dr. Sarah Kim, studying the data from her Xenocultural Analysis Station, added grimly, "Energy signatures suggest pure fusion-based technology, but at scales we've never encountered. They're not optimizing for efficiency, they're optimizing for raw power output." Admiral Vasquez felt the weight of the moment settling on her shoulders. Humanity had become the galaxy's coordinators, the species that made everything work better. But coordination and optimization were very different challenges from facing an invasion fleet that operated on principles of overwhelming force. time to arrival? Based on their current approach vector and Song of Growing Patterns tracking data, approximately 8 standard months, Commander Park replied. And galactic response capabilities? The silence that followed was telling. Dr. Kim pulled up the defensive analysis that everyone had been hoping they would never need. Traditional. Galactic defense relies on individual species maintaining their own fleets, she reported. The Gorvathians have 347 Dreadnought-class vessels, each averaging 5 kilometers in length. The Nexari maintain 89 computational warfare platforms. The Veilter have awakened 156 ancient warships from deep storage. Total defensive capability? Approximately 2,400 major combat vessels with a combined mass roughly equivalent to 15 solar systems. The mathematics were stark. The approaching Devourer fleet outmassed galactic defensive capabilities by more than 25 to 1. Traditional thinking would suggest that resistance was futile, but humanity had never accepted traditional thinking. Lisa, initiate emergency protocols. I want coordination conferences with every major power within 6 hours. Sarah, begin cultural analysis of the Devourer approach. If they're truly rigid and unchanging, they may have predictable tactical limitations. And get me Song of Growing Patterns on the deep channel. We need to understand exactly what we're facing. What emerged over the following days was a picture of an intelligence that represented everything galactic civilization had been evolving away from. The rigid, unchanging Devourers, as Song of Growing Patterns called them, approached every problem through the application of overwhelming force. They consumed entire star systems to fuel construction projects that served no purpose beyond demonstrating their power to consume and build. They do not optimize. Song of Growing Patterns explained through harmonics that made human translation. Systems overload. They do not adapt. They do not cooperate. They expand because expansion is their only concept of success. Dr. Kim's cultural analysis was even more disturbing. Admiral, based on Song of Growing Patterns descriptions and our own observations of their approach patterns, the Devourers appear to operate on the assumption that any problem can be solved by applying more force. They've never encountered resistance that wasn't based on matching force with force. What does that mean for our defensive strategy? It means they've never faced an opponent that fights smart instead of fighting hard. The emergency galactic assembly that convened was unlike any in galactic history. Representatives from over 3,000 species gathered in Unity Station's assembly hall, which had been designed to accommodate the full diversity of galactic civilization rather than favoring the largest species. High Arbiter Morgak of the Gorvathians, his massive frame now accommodated by adjustable platforms that allowed him to interact comfortably with smaller species, opened the session with uncharacteristic brevity. Fellow citizens of galactic civilization, we face a threat that exceeds any in our recorded history. Director Vasquez of the Human Coordination Authority will present our intelligence assessment. The title still amazed Admiral Vasquez. 3 years ago, humanity had been a minor species with limited potential. Now they held coordinating authority over the galaxy's response to existential threats. Honored delegates, she began, her voice carried through translation systems that now operated in real time for all galactic languages. Our analysis indicates that traditional defensive strategies will be insufficient against the approaching threat. The holographic display showed the comparative analysis. The Devourer fleet's overwhelming numerical and material superiority, their apparent immunity to conventional warfare, and their single-minded approach to expansion through consumption. However, Vasquez continued, the same intelligence that warns us of this threat has also identified potential vulnerabilities. The Devourer's rigid approach to problem-solving may represent a critical weakness that we can exploit. Elder Coordinator Felvia of the Veilter, now 351 years old and widely considered the wisest voice in galactic civilization, gestured for recognition. Director Vasquez. The Veilter archives contain records of similar expansion through consumption civilizations from our ancient past. Without exception, they proved unstoppable when faced with conventional resistance. What makes you believe this situation will be different? Vasquez had been preparing for this question. Elder Coordinator, how many of those ancient expansion civilizations encountered opponents who had spent 3 years learning to coordinate the capabilities of 3,000 different species into a unified, adaptive network? The answer, of course, was none. Galactic civilization had become something unprecedented, a truly cooperative network that could adapt and optimize in real time rather than relying on individual species' capabilities. Our strategy, Vasquez explained, will not be to match their force with greater force. It will be to present them with problems that force cannot solve. Primary Coordinator Zixanth of the Nexary Processing Systems chimed with computational harmonics. Director Vasquez, elaborate on problems that force cannot solve. Coordinator, imagine you are trying to destroy a target, but every time you fire at it, it moves to a location you cannot predict, splits into multiple smaller targets, or simply disappears from your sensors entirely. How do you apply overwhelming force to something you cannot target? The strategy that emerged over the following weeks represented the culmination of everything humanity had taught galactic civilization about efficiency, coordination, and adaptive thinking. Instead of meeting the Devourer fleet with massive battleships, galactic forces would deploy thousands of small, fast, coordinated vessels. Instead of trying to match the Devourer's firepower, they would use precision strikes against critical systems. Instead of fighting a conventional space battle, they would turn the Devourer's own overwhelming size against them. The key insight, explained Dr. Kim during the tactical briefing, is that the Devourers have optimized for fighting opponents who think like they do, large, powerful, and rigid. They've never faced an opponent that fights like humans. The fleet that assembled over the following months was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Gorvathian dreadnoughts served as mobile command platforms, but the actual fighting would be done by swarms of human-designed rapid-strike vessels crewed by mixed species. Teams trained in human tactical doctrine. Nexary computational systems provided real-time coordination, but following human-developed protocols that emphasized adaptability over pre-programmed responses. Veilter ancient wisdom-guided strategy, but implemented through human principles of rapid adaptation and continuous optimization. But perhaps most importantly, the defense incorporated capabilities from species that had never been considered. Militarily significant. Rillan precision crafters manufactured targeting systems accurate beyond anything the galaxy had previously achieved. Zelori rapid adaptation specialists served as real-time tactical coordinators. Even the smallest and most peaceful species contributed unique capabilities that, when coordinated through human networks, created defensive capabilities that transcended what any individual species could achieve. Song of Growing Patterns served as advanced scout, using its vast sensory capabilities to track the Devourer fleet's approach while remaining hidden through techniques that combined its natural abilities with human stealth technology. Pattern Song observes rigid, unchanging Devourers. Maintain approach vector unchanging, it reported as the enemy fleet entered the outer detection range. Fleet formation pattern remains identical to previous consumption campaigns. No adaptation signs detected. Admiral Vasquez, now commanding the most diverse fleet in galactic history, felt a grim satisfaction. The Devourer's rigidity, which made them nearly unstoppable against conventional opponents, might prove to be their critical vulnerability against an enemy that specialized in adaptive tactics. All units, she broadcast across the quantum communication network that now connected every ship in the defensive fleet. Initiate Phase 1. Remember, we're not trying to destroy them. We're trying to confuse them long enough to implement the real solution. What followed was unlike any space battle in galactic history. The Devourer fleet, approaching with the inexorable certainty of a natural disaster, found itself facing an opponent that refused to fight according to any recognizable pattern, human-designed. Rapid strike vessels appeared from seemingly impossible hiding places, struck with precision that disabled critical systems rather than attempting to destroy massive ships, and vanished before the Devourers could respond. When the Devourers concentrated their fire on one location, they found empty space and decoy signatures. When they attempted to surround and overwhelm galactic forces, their targets split into dozens of smaller, faster units that scattered in unpredictable directions. For the first time in their expansion across multiple galaxies, the rigid, unchanging Devourers encountered an enemy that could not be defeated through the simple application of overwhelming force. Admiral Vasquez knew that confusion and harassment could only delay the inevitable. The real battle would be won or lost based on humanity's most ambitious project, convincing an entire invasion fleet to stop being what they were. All units, prepare for Phase 2, she broadcast. Time to show them what they're really fighting. For the Devourer fleet hung in space like a malignant constellation, their massive forms blotting out stars and casting shadows across entire solar systems. For 6 months, they had pursued galactic forces through a campaign of harassment and evasion that had left them frustrated but largely intact. Admiral Elena Vasquez stood in the command center of Unity Station, now relocated to the mobile platform. That served as the Galactic Fleet's coordination hub. Around her, representatives from dozens of species worked at stations designed to accommodate their unique physiologies, while maintaining the efficient coordination networks that had become humanity's signature contribution to galactic civilization. Status report, she called. Commander Park looked up from her analysis station, her expression grim. The harassment campaign has been effective at preventing the Devourers from implementing their standard consumption protocols, but we're not actually stopping them. They're adapting their formation patterns to reduce vulnerability to our precision strikes. Dr. Kim, monitoring cultural and tactical patterns from her xenoanalysis station, added, "More concerning, Admiral, they're learning. Their response times to our adaptive tactics have improved by 23% over the past month. If they continue this pattern, our tactical advantages will be neutralized within 6 weeks." Admiral Vasquez nodded. This had always been the risk with the harassment strategy, that the Devourers would eventually adapt enough to neutralize human tactical advantages while retaining their overwhelming material superiority. It's time for Phase 2, she decided. Initiate contact protocols with Song of Growing patterns. We need to implement the real solution. The real solution had been humanity's most audacious proposal, developed during the months of preparation for the Devourer arrival. Instead of destroying the invasion fleet, which was probably impossible, they would attempt to change it. Song of Growing patterns materialized in the communication matrix, its vast consciousness barely contained within the station's quantum. Communication systems. Human, small, fast, efficient, pattern song prepared for transformation attempt. Rigid, unchanging Devourers approach final consumption protocols, implementation window closing. Dr. Kim activated the cultural analysis display. Admiral, our behavioral modeling suggests a 67% probability that Devourer rigidity represents learned behavior rather than fundamental nature. If we can disrupt their consumption patterns sufficiently, we may be able to trigger adaptive responses that could fundamentally alter their approach to expansion. The theory was based on humanity's experience with galactic civilization itself. 3 years ago, the galaxy had operated on rigid hierarchies based on size and power. Human influence had introduced adaptive, cooperative alternatives that had proven more effective than traditional approaches. Species throughout the galaxy had changed their fundamental assumptions about success and survival. If the theory was correct, the Devourers might be capable of similar transformation if they could be forced to confront the failure of their rigid consumption-based approach. Song of Growing Patterns. Admiral Vasquez addressed the vast intelligence. Are you prepared to serve as communication interface with the Devourer fleet? Pattern Song prepared. Warning Harmony. Rigid, unchanging Devourers may attempt to consume. Pattern Song if transformation attempt fails. Understood. Initiate contact. What followed was the galaxy's first attempt at diplomatic contact with the Devourer fleet. Song of Growing Patterns. Using communication methods that transcended normal space-time limitations, reached out to the vast consciousnesses that directed the invasion fleet. The response was immediate and predictable. The Devourers attempted to analyze Song of Growing Patterns as a potential consumption target, measuring its mass, energy output, and material composition with a methodical thoroughness of entities whose only concept of interaction was absorption and destruction. But Song of Growing Patterns had been prepared for this response by months of coordination with human strategists. Rigid, unchanging Devourers. It transmitted across frequencies that human technology could barely detect. Pattern Song offers presence consumption alternatives. Observe Witness efficiency demonstrations. The demonstration that followed was humanity's masterstroke. Instead of trying to convince the Devourers through argument or force, they simply showed them what optimization could achieve. Human rapid strike fleets, coordinated through quantum communication networks, began to systematically dismantle the abandoned infrastructure of star systems that the Devourers had already marked for consumption. But instead of destroying these installations, they rebuilt them using human efficiency principles. Massive, wasteful construction projects were transformed into efficient, multi-purpose installations. Resource extraction operations that had consumed entire asteroids for minimal yield were replaced with precision mining that harvested 10 times the material while leaving the asteroids structurally intact. Energy generation systems that required the consumption of entire stars were replaced with fusion networks that could provide equivalent power using a fraction of the fuel. Devourers watched in what could only be described as confusion as humans demonstrated that the same goals they achieved through consumption and destruction could be accomplished through optimization and coordination with dramatically superior results. Observe Witness. Song of Growing Patterns continued. Small, fast, efficient achieve same goals as consumption without destruction waste. Rigid, unchanging Devourers methods demonstrate inefficiency pattern. For the first time in their multi-galactic expansion, the Devourers encountered the concept that their fundamental approach might be suboptimal. Primary Coordinator Zixanth, monitoring the exchange from the Nexari computational interface, provided real-time analysis. Admiral were detecting massive computational activity within the Devourer fleet. They appeared to be running comparative efficiency analyses. Dr. Kim added, cultural patterns suggest they're experiencing cognitive dissonance. Their entire civilization is based on the assumption that consumption equals success, but they're seeing superior results achieved through conservation and optimization. The critical moment came when the Devourers attempted to implement their standard consumption protocol on a star system that humans had already optimized for efficiency. Instead of the straightforward resource absorption they expected, They encountered installations that actively resisted consumption while producing more useful output than destruction would yield. Warning harmony, song of growing patterns transmitted. Urgently, rigid unchanging devourers experiencing pattern disruption may attempt increased consumption to resolve inefficiency paradox. Admiral Vasquez had prepared for this possibility. The devourer's response to cognitive dissonance might be to double down on their traditional approaches rather than adapting to new information. All units implement containment protocols. Do not allow them to resolve the paradox through increased destruction. What followed was the most complex coordination effort in galactic history. Human-designed rapid response fleets position themselves to prevent the devourers from implementing their increased consumption protocols, while simultaneously demonstrating alternative approaches to every problem the devourers encountered. When the devourers attempted to consume a star for energy, human fusion networks provided equivalent power more efficiently. When they tried to harvest material through planetary destruction, human precision mining extracted superior resources without destroying the planets. When they attempted to expand through conquest, human coordination networks showed how cooperation could achieve expansion goals more effectively. Pattern Song detects massive consciousness shift in Devourer Fleet, Song of Growing Patterns reported. Rigid, unchanging devourers experiencing first efficiency awareness in consumption cycle history. The transformation, when it came, was not dramatic. There was no moment of surrender, no sudden reversal of approach. Instead, individual devourer vessels began to experiment with human-demonstrated techniques. A massive consumption ship attempted to implement precision extraction instead of planetary destruction. A fleet coordinator began to test optimization protocols rather than overwhelming force applications. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, the rigid, unchanging devourers began to change. Dr. Kim, monitoring the cultural shifts through analysis systems that had been refined through years of studying galactic civilization, provided real-time assessment. Admiral, we're seeing fundamental behavioral modification throughout the Devourer fleet. They're not just learning new techniques, they're questioning their basic assumptions about success and efficiency. The breakthrough came when a Devourer subfleet, attempting to consume a human-optimized installation, instead found itself learning to operate the installation more efficiently than consumption would have allowed. For the first time in their civilization's history, Devourers experienced the satisfaction of creation rather than destruction. Song of Growing Patterns, Admiral Vasquez addressed the vast intelligence. Can you facilitate direct communication with the Devourer Fleet Command? Human small fast efficient. Pattern Song detects communication willingness from Devourer primary consciousness. Warning harmony. Direct communication may reveal human coordination methods to consumption intelligence. The risk is acceptable. Open the channel. The consciousness that emerged in the communication matrix was vast beyond human comprehension, ancient beyond galactic civilization's memory, and completely focused on the strange new concepts that humanity had introduced to its understanding. Small consciousness coordinators. It transmitted through frequencies that made the station's hull vibrate. Consumption primary intelligence experiences efficiency pattern unknown. Request demonstration clarification of optimization protocols. Admiral Vasquez found herself in the surreal position of conducting the galaxy's first diplomatic negotiation with a civilization based on consuming entire star systems. Great consciousness, she replied, using honorifics that Dr. Kim had quickly developed based on Devourer communication patterns. Human Coordination Collective offers knowledge sharing regarding efficiency optimization. Exchange proposal. Consumption cessation. In return for coordination technique access. What followed was perhaps the most complex negotiation in galactic history. The Devourers, faced with evidence that their fundamental approach was inefficient, were willing to consider alternatives. But their entire civilization was built around consumption-based expansion, and changing such deeply ingrained patterns required not just new knowledge, but new ways of thinking about existence itself, humanity. Working with galactic civilizations' accumulated wisdom and Song of Growing Patterns' vast perspective, developed what became known as the Transformation Protocols, a systematic approach to converting consumption-based expansion into cooperation-based growth. The process took months. Individual Devourer vessels had to be retrained in optimization techniques. Their massive construction projects had to be redesigned for efficiency rather than impressive scale. Most challenging of all, their entire civilization had to learn to measure success through productivity and cooperation rather than conquest and consumption. But as the transformation progressed, something remarkable emerged. The Devourers, when freed from the rigid constraints of consumption-based thinking, proved to be extraordinarily capable collaborators. Their vast scale, when directed toward optimization rather than destruction, could achieve engineering projects that surpassed anything galactic civilization had attempted. A year after the first contact with the Devourer fleet, Admiral Vasquez stood in the command center of the new Unity installation, a cooperative construction project between galactic civilization and the transformed Devourers that served as both a symbol of successful transformation and a practical demonstration of what could be achieved through coordination rather than conquest. Admiral, Commander Park reported, the latest efficiency analysis shows remarkable progress. Former Devourer fleets are now contributing to galactic infrastructure development at productivity levels 400% above previous standards. Resource optimization throughout the galaxy has improved by 67%. And most significantly, we've had zero consumption-based conflicts in the past 6 months. Dr. Kim added, cultural analysis indicates that the transformation is becoming self-sustaining. Former Devourers are developing their own optimization innovations and actively teaching efficiency principles to other species they encounter. But perhaps the most significant development was the message that arrived through Song of Growing Patterns from intelligences beyond even the Devourer fleet's original territory. Human small, fast, efficient coordination methods detected across multiple galaxy regions. Song of Growing Patterns reported efficiency optimization patterns spreading through intelligence networks beyond local galaxy cluster. Transformation cascade effect observed in civilizations pattern Song had no previous contact with. Admiral Vasquez studied the implications. Humanity's influence hadn't just transformed their local galaxy, it was spreading across intergalactic networks, carried by transformed Devourers and other intelligences who had observed the success of cooperation-based civilization. Admiral, Dr. Kim said quietly, we may have accidentally started a fundamental shift in how intelligence approaches expansion and development across multiple galaxies. The irony wasn't lost on any of them. Humanity, dismissed 3 years earlier as a minor species with limited potential, had become the catalyst for a transformation that spanned multiple galaxies and billions of civilizations. 5 years after humanity's first contact with galactic civilization, Admiral Elena Vasquez stood before the Grand Assembly of the Galactic Cooperative, the organization that had emerged from the transformation of the old council-based hierarchy. The assembly hall had been completely redesigned using principles that humanity had introduced. Instead of size-based seating arrangements, delegates were positioned based on expertise and contribution. Massive Devourers worked alongside tiny precision specialists. Ancient Veilturs shared planning platforms with rapid adaptation species. The hall itself could be reconfigured in real time to accommodate any gathering, any purpose, any challenge. Fellow citizens of galactic civilization, Vasquez began. Her words translated instantly into the languages and communication methods of over 5,000 species. 5 years ago, humanity was classified as a minor species with limited expansion potential. Today, I stand before you not as a representative of human supremacy, but as a coordinator of the most successful cooperative civilization in galactic history. The statistics were staggering. Galactic productivity had increased by 340%. Resource waste had dropped to near-zero levels. Conflicts between species had virtually ceased, replaced by collaborative problem-solving. Most remarkably, the galaxy was now in contact with over 200 other galaxies, sharing optimization techniques and cooperative methods across distances that had previously been unimaginable. We learned, Vasquez continued, that taking a galaxy by storm doesn't require conquest. It requires becoming indispensable. It requires offering solutions that work better than what existed before. It requires proving that diversity and cooperation are more powerful than uniformity and dominance. High Arbiter Morgak, now serving as senior coordinator for large-scale infrastructure, gestured for recognition. His massive frame, once a symbol of dominance, now served as a platform for coordination equipment that helped manage projects spanning multiple star systems. Director Vasquez, he said, using the title that humanity had earned through demonstrated capability rather than inherited authority, the Gorvathian Assembly wishes to formally acknowledge that our initial assessment of human potential was not merely incorrect, it was fundamentally flawed in its assumptions about what constitutes strength in a cooperative civilization. Similar acknowledgments came from across the Assembly. The Nexari had discovered that human-style rapid adaptation improved their computational capabilities exponentially. The Vailter had found that human optimization principles could accelerate their century-long projects without sacrificing depth or wisdom. Even the transformed Devourers had learned that creation was more satisfying than consumption, but perhaps the most significant change was in the galaxy's approach to new contact with unknown intelligences. The old system of size-based evaluation had been replaced with capability-based assessment. New species were valued for what they could contribute rather than how physically impressive they appeared. The storm, Vasquez concluded, was never about destruction. It was about transformation. Humanity didn't conquer the galaxy, we helped it become what it was always capable of being. As the assembly concluded, delegates from thousands of species mingled in the coordination areas, planning projects that would have been impossible under the old hierarchical system. Human coordination networks facilitated conversations between beings who had never been able to communicate effectively before. Human optimization principles were being applied to challenges spanning multiple galaxies. Dr. Sarah Kim, now serving as Director of Intergalactic Cultural Exchange, approached Admiral Vasquez with a report that would have seemed impossible 5 years earlier. Admiral, we're receiving communication requests from 47 new galaxy clusters. Apparently, word of our cooperative civilization model has spread through networks we didn't even know existed. They want to learn human coordination techniques. Admiral Vasquez smiled, looking out through the transparency at the stars that now hummed with cooperative activity rather than competitive conflict. Humanity had indeed taken the galaxy by storm, not through conquest, but through proving that the smallest species could have the biggest impact when they focused on making everything work better. The galaxy would never be the same. And across the cosmos, other civilizations were learning that sometimes the greatest strength comes in the smallest packages. especially when those packages are designed to help everyone else reach their full potential. In the end, humanity's greatest achievement wasn't growing large enough to matter. It was proving that size had never been what mattered at all. Hey there, incredible humans. If this epic journey of human ingenuity and determination didn't give you chills of pride, I don't know what will. We've just witnessed how humanity went from being dismissed as too small to matter to becoming the coordinators of galactic civilization itself. This story proves something incredible about our species. We don't need to be the biggest or strongest to make the biggest impact. Sometimes the greatest strength comes from being exactly the right size for the job, and having the wisdom to help everyone else become their best selves too. I want to know, which moment made you feel most proud to be human? Was it when we refused to be intimidated by giants? When we turned our limitations into advantages? Or when we chose cooperation over conquest? Drop your answer in the comments below. And absolutely smash that like button if you believe that humanity's greatest superpower isn't our size or strength, but our ability to look at any situation and ask, how can we make this work better for everyone? I've got another mind-blowing story ready that explores what happens when the galaxy's most advanced AI encounters human intuition and accidentally discovers emotions. Trust me, you won't want to miss seeing artificial intelligence learn what it means to be beautifully, chaotically human. Until next time, remember, you don't have to be the biggest person in the room to have the biggest impact. Sometimes the greatest victories come from helping everyone else win too. See you in the next one, Galactic Coordinators.